All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of CheloniaCast. This is going to be a really cool episode. This is another one that's going to be pretty sort of species group specific, I guess, but it's going to be a fun discussion overall. Today we've got Kevin Labiel from University of Arkansas, I believe, and it's going to be really fun to talk. Kevin's really interested kind of in the Pelomedusoides, but I'm not going to go too much there. I'll let you introduce yourself, but we're really happy to have you here, Kevin. So thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here as well. Yes, should I introduce myself?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I'm Kevin Labiel. I am from France. I grew up in the Caribbean, the West Indies, and then I moved to Arkansas about 8 years ago. I got my PhD, uh, actually in computer science. It's nothing related to to turtle. I'm just a hobbyist when it comes to turtles. Like you said, I'm specifically interested in the Pelomedusidae, Medusidae. I'm not sure how you guys say it. The super family that encompasses, you know, Podocnemidae and the super family would be Pelomedusoid. Oh my, I can't even say it. Pelomedusoides. Anyway, so yeah, it's technically it's Pelusios and Podocnemididae, Podocnemidids species, but mostly Pelusios for my part. Uh, Pelomedusa and Pelusios species. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's an often very looked over group of turtles.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very few people actually, you know, take the time to study those two families. Unfortunately.
Yeah, they're
How did
really
you
interesting.
get interested in them in the first place? Because as they're kind of saying, it's a very sort of specific niche group of turtles. So what about them, and how did you get into them specifically?
Well, actually, it's very simple. So I moved back to France, to get my bachelor's and master's degree. And so when I was a kid, of course, I used to keep turtles, radio sliders, like like everybody. Um, but then, when I moved back to France, those turtles were banned. So in France, they're banned. They can't be sold because they're invasive species. And to my surprise, and that's what I wanted to get again. And to my surprise, I could not find them. The only species I could find was Pelusios castaneus and Pelomedusa subrufa at the time. And so I got three of those and, started being interested in them. And that's how it started, really.
How about sort of just you're interested in turtles overall? Like when you got kind of into Pallusios, but how did your
Mhm.
kind of interest in Colonians kind of was that something from a young age?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's like most of us. I will remember I remember this day my whole life. I went to a pet store with my mom, and I didn't go to many pet stores before, as a kid. But she took me to that pet store one day, and I saw that little squared aquarium, and there was probably like 50 little baby radio sliders in that, like swimming everywhere and just moving around. And I don't know, I just fell in love with that tiny little animal. It was really it's very strange, you just see them and you're like, oh my god, this is just it's so cute and super interesting with the little shell and but that's really how it started. Yeah.
This actually kind of similar to me when I was 5 years old. One of my neighbors down the street, I remember now they knocked on our doors because they knew I was into animals and everything. 'Cause even when I was little, I was always like that. And they're like, "Well, do you want our turtles?" And they gave me a pair of an adult pair of red-eared sliders. I had them for like 7 years, and I mean, I would find box turtles in the backyard, but it just grew from there.
Yeah, exactly. I think it hits you as a child, like most of the time. Yeah.
100%. It like roots in and it just keeps growing.
Yeah. It's like a. Yeah, it's kind of like having a crush on a woman. It just happens suddenly, and you just. I mean, you become obsessed. Like it's.
Yeah, that's a good.
That's a really good analogy. I've never heard that one used.
That's
that
pretty
fits
good.
pretty well.
I haven't heard of that yet.
Yeah, you become obsessed and start stalking them and tracking them down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know.
Start taking photos of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting places you could take that analogy.
Yeah.
That's funny though. But it is fun to see. Like, I don't go to too many reptile expos or anything like that, but a lot of people, they talk about the bad aspect of like impulse buying of turtles and everything, but at the same rate, those expos can be sort of fundamental to getting people interested in turtles overall and from a young age. So I think that there's a lot of value in that kind of the exposure element. But that's a cool story. And then you moved to, is it, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but Martinique?
Yeah, it's actually that, yeah.
Or that's where you were born, or that's kind of an interesting place, I guess, to grow up. What was that like?
Yeah, that's so yeah, I was born in France and moved to Martinique. It's even though it's a French territory and it's part of France, it's very different. Like it's a whole different culture. It's kind of like in the U.S. You have California and Arkansas, which is a completely different. Same country, same people, same language, but completely different values, different way of living, different weather. But I think had a very positive change, in my life. So yeah, it was fun. The thing is, sadly, there was not much turtle back in Martinique. Like I've never really seen any wild turtles, to be honest. That was a down part of it.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything native there, right? Is it?
No, native, no.
Yeah. Interesting. But maybe some of the introduced Caribbean sliders, or what kind of species did you find?
No, it's actually radio sliders as well.
Oh, of course.
Like I said, it used to be sold in pet store, like heavily, and people bought it, and when it grows too big, they just release it in nature. Yeah.
Notice the radio sliders. Oh god.
Yeah.
Even in like really remote places, in like real rural like creeks and stuff, I still find them in places where I'm like, how did they get here? Like they've managed to invade everything.
Yeah, I think it's just Antarctica. They're not, just can't find them there. But I think they're I believe. I visited Taiwan a long time ago, and yeah, same thing in Taiwan. I had a lot of Remis sinensis in a pond, and of course a bunch of radio sliders swimming with it.
That's such an interesting comparison when you see things like that. Like one of my favorites was in Pritchard's Rapidus book, like the giant soft shells.
Yeah.
Like there was one of like a huge male Rapidus, like one of the last ones. That this one was, it's dead now, but it was basking on a rock in like a garden or whatever zoo it was at, and there was like 20 red-eared sliders next to it and on top of it. Like, just the most intense comparison of like the least endangered turtle with the most.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're everywhere, like absolutely everywhere.
That's what my my research with Western pond turtles focused on, the interactions between red-eared sliders and the pond turtles in California, and it's pretty interesting to look at that. I mean, our takeaway is that there might not be as much they're in sort of different niches to begin with, so there might not be a ton of overlap, but there's like even I think the Pallusios, there's some connections there on the Seychelles where you've got I don't know if they're still considered, but the the yellow mud turtles, the Castanoides intergularis, and then the subniger, the Parisialis. Although I think that's kind of the subspecific status is debated, but regardless,
Yeah.
I think that there was some there's sliders there even, and we don't know what kind of the impact of the sliders on that the islands there. But the fact that they're in the Seychelles is on some of these remote Seychelles islands is pretty interesting as well.
I wouldn't even be surprised if there was some in the if we found one in like the volcanic lake that's on Fernandina and Galapagos. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we went there. Like, what's that moving in the water? Oh my god, it's a slider.
No tortoises, but we've got
hopefully we'll find out in the coming months or whatever, when they go back there. But yeah, actually the Seychelles terrapins, I wanted to talk about those when we get the chance at some point. But
yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's a cool group of turtles. Well, I'm sort of curious. So, Kevin, you do work with the TurtleRoom but also the African Chelonian Institute, and you've brought sort of, I guess, you have your background's computer science. That's what your PhD was in. I think that's what you said. But I'm just curious, kind of how you bring those two things together. It's kind of a unique thing, but obviously a lot of areas for opportunity there. And what's some of the work you do with ACI and TTR?
Okay, yeah. So at TTR, I write articles when I can. But in terms of computer science, I create resources, so online resources, things like. So TurtleRoom has the World Turtle News thing. It's a subscription. You get news about turtle like every week, etc., etc. So I created that one. Just a bunch of resources like that, specifically educational resources. But the biggest thing I've done at TurtleRoom was the software DCL, Digital Chelonian Log. It's like a web app. So we call it a web app. It's like a software. It's online. So and it allows people who keeps turtle to save their data, enter data about their turtles, and save the data. Growth data, health data, pictures, documents. Pretty much anything you can think of. Eggs related stuff, clutches. Then you can build graphs and matrices and stuff like that to visualize your data. So everything is online. It's accessible from any platform, anywhere you are. So that's the biggest thing I've done with the TurtleRoom. That combines my background in computer science. And you ask also about ACI, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. ACI. I used to be more involved, but Thomas is so busy. Honestly, it's it's really hard to get a hold of him and specifically work on something together. There's something we've been working on together for years. It's a newsletter, like an annual newsletter that we are working on. So I designed the whole. So it would be like a little magazine that you receive every year. So I created the design of that. It's pretty much almost done, really. We just need contents now, so articles from various authors. And so that magazine would focus on Colonians, but in Africa and from Africa. Not only what's happening in situ, but ex situ, but specifically on African Chelonians. So that would be interesting. That would be cool if we could, pull it together someday.
That sounds like a cool project. That's Jack and I were kind of talking about something along these lines, but because we've been planning Jack's been planning a Galapagos trip That's kind of an interesting one. It's a cool thing, but we were talking about it and certain things about it. Logistically, it's challenging, but
Yeah.
out of all the places, like the stereotypical you're into turtles, you have to go to the Galapagos. I think that obviously it's an amazing place. There's a lot that's happened there, but realistically, if someone were to give me a chunk of cash to go and do whatever kind of research, I'd pick probably Africa like 20 times before I'd pick a lot of the probably Galapagos. But I mean, obviously I'm not gonna but it's just kind of interesting for turtle people like us. There's just so much in Africa that's so interesting, and yet there's limited resources both in the country and just abroad for work there. So like a newsletter like that sounds really interesting to get updates on that, on the work being done there.
Yeah, because they don't have much exposure, so that's the purpose. That would be the purpose of that newsletter, to expose what's actually been, what's going on in Africa, what's been done, and maybe that could help conservation at some point.
Yeah, that would be some cool stuff. Well, that's some cool stuff. The but yeah, I guess I don't know. Tell us a little bit about the Pallusios and Pelomedusoid. That's kind of, I guess, our main interest, and that's definitely your specialty. And as Jack mentioned, and that this, one of the things that's really cool about these turtles is the fact that as a genus, I think after Echinosternon, it's the most specios genus of turtle. I can't think of another one that would. Graptomes is, I think, close, but it's got to. There's a lot of species in there, but most people probably don't know much more than just your maybe any of them. But I guess the East African black mud turtles, the Sub-Niger, those ones might be familiar to some, but beyond that, I think that it's pretty foreign to a lot of people. So I guess just anything interesting there. What species do you work with in Pallusios?
Personally, what I work with is what I have at home. I have Castaneus, Nanus, Upembe, Chapini, Niger, Gabonensis as well. Let's see what else. I think that's the one I have here. And I'm still missing a lot. Like you said, there's still a lot missing.
That's awesome to be able to work with those. I mean, how do you come across? How do you get access to turtles like that? There's not a lot of people that work with them, or like how do you come across some of those?
Yeah, that it's because like I said, I mean, like you said, not many people actually know about them. So you really need to, it's really connection based. You can't just, you have to know someone who knows someone who knows someone, and I mean that's the only way. And even that, they're pretty. Some people are pretty, secretive about what they keep, and I respect that and I understand that. And some species of Pelusios, it's still really hard to get a hold of. I got actually. Oh, I have Bicranicus as well, Pelusios Bicranicus, and that it's probably a dream species for most Pelusios keepers. And I had the chance to just know someone who knows someone, and that's pretty much it. But I got pretty lucky on that one, Uh, and, even if the US are a pretty big country, it's still quite hard to put your hands on some of those species in captivity.
Yeah, they seem to be pretty challenging to get. I hadn't seen too many of them. I really didn't know kind of the diversity of how many. I think it's like 18 to 20 Pallusios. How many species are in the genus? I mean, I guess that constantly is changing, but
yeah. I think you're
At
right.
least 17. At least
Yeah,
17.
I think it was 17. Well, Sinuators got split in two, so that would be 18 now. However, Porietalis and Castaneus and Tergularis are not really valid today. So yeah, it would be around 17, 18, 20, something like that.
Yeah, that it's that's pretty crazy in
Yeah,
terms of that's a lot. It's a lot, and I mean, most people, like I said, they're not going to know that. But that's one of the cool things too about them is there's I think a lot of cryptic diversity within Pallusio's itself. Like you said, the serrated sinuatus, the serrated hinged terrapins. I try to say like the common names too, just because some people might not necessarily, but the serrated hinged terrapins, there seems to be a lot. There was a study, I think that there's been a few, but very kind of comparatively little work on the kind of phylogenetics, the intragenic phylogenetics of the group. But the sinuatus, the serrated terrapins, there's a lot of, I guess, phylogeographic structuring genetically, and they were split recently into the, I think, Botegi is the northern. It's a subspecies, but still, who knows where that will go in the future. And there's a lot there. Also, the I don't know if there are any of these in captivity, but the variable hinge terrapins, or I'm sure they're in captivity. I don't know about in the U.S. The Rhodesianus, there seems to be a lot of kind of structuring there, and I think that one of those analyses there were two different clades and so potentially two cryptic species. I think, but that's another one. There's a lot of this kind of difference that we still have yet to uncover. I always wonder, like the DRC and the Congo, Central African Republic, places like that really are just closed off to research how much we're missing in terms of like species diversity there. I don't.
Yeah, actually, it's a good point you mentioned. I don't know the common names, so I'm sorry for people who are watching and I like it's like seriously, I just don't know the common names. I only use the scientific names, so I'm not familiar with the names. But yeah, like when Sinuators was split back in 2019, I mean, it was a big surprise to me because it's not a species that I thought would be studied, or like that was studied at all. Like, if there is one that definitely needs attention is Rhodesianus, like you said, the variable mud turtle, because this one, I mean, you take two specimens from two different countries, they look completely different, so I was expecting some studies on this species, and I'm expecting a split soon, hopefully. But yeah, it's crazy, we still discover new species, and I'm sure there's more. Like you said, Congo specifically, which is probably the country in Africa with the most of the highest number of turtle species, especially Pelusios. I'm pretty sure you can, if you search long enough, you probably find something new.
Oh, yeah.
It would be fun to. I mean, that area. It's so unfortunate that the political instability there kind of includes any work being done, because there's so much natural history that we just don't even know. The Pallusios is cool too. Is sort of is a genetics nerd, I guess. It's a good example of where analyses can really confound relationships. There was a study, but yeah, like the Rhodesianus, the common names too is an interesting point, because I mean, I think that common names for species like Pallusios that have like probably every village you go to, it's going to have a different. So it's kind of, I don't know, but the Rhodesianus, there was one study I saw a while back. I think it was 2016. And it was Rhodesianus and the keeled, the carinatus, the keeled mud turtles, and it was looking at I think like kind of like genetic structuring based on habitat types. And they looked at 6 species. They also had the dwarf mud turtles, and I think that their point mainly there was that their habitat type is not associated with the level of kind of genetic diversity for each species. You might expect that, but that it was kind of an interesting because they also looked at the relationships. I think like looking at haplotypes of Rhodesianus and Carinatus, which I think is the sister species, and that the idea that the Rhodesianus is 2 species. I think they also got that idea in that paper, but it's pretty weird because when they did the analyses, I think they didn't expect this, but the Carinatus were nestled within one of the clades, or sister to one of the clades of the Rhodesianus, and then there was another clade of Rhodesianus that was sister to that clade. So then Rhodesianus becomes, I guess, paraphyletic with Carinatus nestled in there, and then that was just subject to. I think that was all based on mitochondrial analyses, but that was one of those things that is pretty interesting to look at. We probably need more like nuclear markers to back up some of the things that have been kind of analyzed with the mitochondrial data. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember that article as well. And but like you said, the political aspect of these countries in Africa make it so that it's difficult for researchers from outside Africa to actually get involved with them. And it's quite sad, it's just restrict the amount of research that could be done, and it's really sad. It's really sad. Lucas, Lucas, what's his last name? Israeli, I think. He I think he's from Italy, a herpetologist, and he didn't really care about that, and he still went to Uganda. That's where you can find Cyclonerbis elegans, the
Yep, I saw that
Nubian,
lately.
yeah, the Nubian flapshell turtle, and because Uganda, I think, is one of those countries where politically it's not quite stable, and not many researcher would dare to venture out there and do field work, and but I guess Lucas didn't care, and he just went, and he just published like 2-3 articles just on that, on that species, and he actually rediscovered that it's there. It's still, it still exists, which he confirmed because we actually didn't know. So it's really cool. It's really cool, and if he can do that, then certainly other people could do it with in other countries, and I guess would have much more research done on Pelusios, but
Yeah,
that's not.
I thought that was really interesting with the Nubian flap shells for a long time. Like they were just they'd been considered extinct. But like, has anybody looked in most of the most of their range or most of the large swaths of habitat that in these countries that are just really unstable and no one goes to, or they just kind of like we just don't even know, so they're written off as extinct. And lo and behold, turns out they're still there.
Yeah.
They get bigger than I thought too. Like I think I was reading one of those articles, and he had individuals that were like 31 inches in carapace length or something. Like that's huge. That's up there with like some of the Asian soft shells. That's big.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, he Luca actually went there, and the species was just I don't even think it was vulnerable at the time. It was just one of those species that nobody cared to get an update on. Nobody really cared about them. Thomas, from ACI, has always been interested in that species, and the last captive specimen died in New York, I think back in 2009 or something, right?
Something like that, yeah.
2010. And so after that, we had no idea what that species is, in the wild. Thomas has always been advocating them and pushing people to they need an update. They might be extinct. Actually, it's like we don't know. We really don't know. And just like 2 years ago, like I said, Lucas took the matter into his hand, and he did a good job. It seems that they're not as difficult to find as I would have expected. It's not like the Raphators, the Chinese equivalent, so to speak. But they're still not that easy to find either. It's not like. But so yeah, it went. I think it's critically endangered. Is it?
I think it is still.
Today?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it went from like vulnerable to critically endangered. They skipped every step. And I remember Thomas was at the IUCN meeting discussing that. And when he got out of the meeting, he shoot me a text, and he's like, "Okay, that Cyclonorbis legens is going to be promoted to critically endangered." And I was like, "Man, finally!" So that was really cool. That was a pretty cool update.
Was that before they were rediscovered in South Sudan, I think, or maybe the border Uganda? Was that before or right after?
Oh no, that was before. Oh yeah, no, I said Uganda. You're right. It's South Sudan. No, that was before. Actually, many years before.
Oh, okay. That's
was one of his articles in the TC magazine at one point. I think that I saw it there.
Oh, I'm not sure.
I think yeah.
Yeah. The most recent edition with Jane Goodall on the front, I think that he has an article in there. That's the only reason. Well, I remember there was a publication about it a while back, but I just saw that. But yeah, he talks a little bit more about. I think they found like 2 or 3 of them, but in just their preliminary surveys. But it seems like you said, that there's probably a lot more, and we just don't. It's a really interesting. The Nubian flap shells are a really interesting story. Like the fact that, again, it's a perfect example of that kind of like right below the Sahara region. That takes a certain type of adventurer to go and go in there to find things. But I think that it pays off most of the time because there's so much. It'd be fun to mount an expedition to like the Central African Republic or the DRC. I mean, you'd have to certainly get a network of people going there because it's just so challenging to navigate now. But
yeah,
it'd be fun to go and look for a lot of that hidden diversity of things. But that's some cool stuff. So I'm curious, the Upemba mud turtles. I guess I'm switching this topic kind of spontaneously, but that's one that's been cool for me. I don't know what your experience with them is, or like what you know about them natural history wise. I was out in Florida at the Turtle Source facility, and Mark has a lot of them there. Are a few of them there, and I think they're really interesting. I don't know why. Most people probably just pass them up for kind of a bland, drab mud turtle, but I just think they're interesting just because they're from the DRC, and there's not been really much done. But I don't know if you've got captive experience or what you know about those guys.
Yeah, Upemba. Yeah, it was actually, it was considered a subspecies of Becranicus at first. When it was described as Pelusius Becranicus upembe. So they thought it was a subspecies of Becranicus. Then they, changed it and promoted it to a full species. There's not many in the US. Interesting story, actually. I contacted a friend yesterday about it. And so I asked him his personal experience, and he, to his knowledge, he got the very first import of Upembe in the US. That was in 2009, and it was just 2 juveniles, like 200 grams each, super tiny. But yeah, that was very first import that we know of. Might have been others before. But yeah, just started with just 2 little juveniles. actually they were supposed to get Bicranicus at first, but they couldn't get Bicranicus, so they got Upembe instead, which is still pretty cool. Upembe is really, really cool. And then, years later, maybe about 8 to 10 years ago, so much, I know, a little while after 2009, there was an import of a handful of Upembe in the US. And, all ended in Florida. Pretty much where all species land anyways. But yeah, and from that, I think every Upembe you have in the US come from that handful of specimen that were first imported like 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago. So the genetic diversity is just, very small, unfortunately. But yeah, it just started with just a handful of individuals that were imported to the country. I don't think they're that difficult to find today. But they're still difficult if you don't if you don't have connections. But it's not super difficult to find. I have one at home actually.
But the genetic diversity in the wild populations is very, very deep, right? I heard like this entire group has some just astonishing genetic diversity that's like comparable or even like exceeding our American kind of sternids. It's amazing.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, their distribution in the wild is actually very small. If you if you look at the distribution, I think they're just in one lake or something, or two lakes maybe. But they're not. I don't think they're super rare. So
Oh yeah, I was saying like Pelomedusoid in general. The entire
oh yes,
yeah.
yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about like what you think about this the new splits that has been occurring in Polymedusa. Like, traditionally these were species that were described using morphological characters like the formation of their pectoral scutes, and as a result, there's been a lot of back and forth changes. Species being changed into one, and now we have a lot of mitochondrial works, and now we have a bunch of new species. What do you think about those species?
Yeah, it's I mean, that was long due, that split of Pelomedusa in MNT. I don't know if you know, there were only three subspecies before. You can't have three subspecies in an entire country, an entire continent. It's like the entire continent only has three subspecies. That's ridiculous. But so that split was long due, but I like it, and DNA work has done incredible job today. It clearly defines and find new species and stuff. But I'm not species that are split 100% just based on DNA. I don't necessarily agree with it. It's just a personal opinion. Of course, it's not. It's just my personal opinion. I wish there was some morphological differences, which would actually make it easier to identify. When you grab two specimens and you're like, oh, okay, this is such and such, and this is such and such. But I think the split was solely based on DNA data, and so it makes it super difficult for us, to do our job of the breeding job. It makes it difficult for us because the amount of Pelomedusa that you have in a country probably will never know exactly which they are, unless you actually pay for the DNA study. So
that's a great point. I personally, taxonomically, I think mitochondrial DNA is it's a lot more favorable than looking at those pectoral scutes. That's the whole reason why I think it's Subrurum that got morphed into one species, because of those unreliable characters. But it would be nice to have some like cranial morphology that's been done to for us to physically identify those turtles.
Yeah, exactly. I'm pretty sure they would there are some more studies to come on Pelomedusa. I hope, because I mean, just throwing 2 articles on, hey, we split it from 3 to 14 species, and goodbye. It's kind of, I don't like it. I hope there'll be more research done on them. So yeah, I agree, and I I was expecting something less than that 14 split. But the DNA is DNA. It speaks for itself. You can't really go against it. But yeah, I just wish we could have some more morphological data in there.
That makes that's kind of something you said a bit earlier about like the captive turtles. It's now you don't know which ones to assign them to unless you can pay to have the DNA done, and that applies to a lot of different turtles too. Like it's an issue even with like alligator snapping turtles have been split, or Galapagos tortoises, which there's over a dozen species of them, and in captivity for the longest time they just bred whichever ones would breed with each other, and now it's like, well, which ones are even can even offer anything from a like conservation standpoint. It's now it's like it creates a lot of extra work they have to do again to figure it out. But yeah,
And I know it could be that actually one of those. Who knows? But I'm not saying it's true. But it could be that one of those Pelomedusa is actually, I don't know, endangered, because we moved from
Yeah.
3 to 14 species, and maybe it is that one of these particular species is now endangered because it has for some reason. I mean, it brings a lot more work to do, and I hope they'll do that work, extra work.
I'm trying to pull up the paper for that because that's one of the most interesting, in my opinion, studies that's happened in the past 20 years for turtles. Because that started the idea that Pelomedusa was historically, as has been said, it was just one continuous species, and I think 2 subspecies, and starting in 2010. Maybe a little bit before that, but at least this was when I think it was first kind of at least documented in the literature. The idea that there was a lot more diversity in Pelomedusa that was actually like greater than the diversity within Pallusios kind of came to light with some work that was done looking at the relationships of Pelomedusa to Pallusios. And then I think it was Fritz in 2014. That's the paper. I'm trying to get it up here, but they did. It was just based on mitochondrial. I think like around 2,000 BP for 3 different genes that they analyzed, and they used sort of an integrative. This was also, I guess, why it's interesting. Beyond the fact that they split a group, a Pan-African turtle. Literally, they're pretty much everywhere in Africa. So yeah, like you'd expect that with a range that big, there's certainly something there. But they split what was considered one species into, I think, 13 different or 14 different clades, and named 10 new species, which you don't typically see in one paper. But it was also, I think, backed up pretty well in terms of, I think that nuclear genetic work needs to be done to look at the potential for a kind of a different gene tree to be produced there. But it was done, I think, in an integrative way that it is tough because, like you said, Kevin, there's not a morphological basis for a lot of them. And I think that that's kind of given that they're so cryptic morphologically, as it's tough with the habitats they're in. There's not a lot of push to diverge in form, but maybe in terms of how they've been isolated, you just get a lot of neutral selection, so without kind of a functional or morphological effect. And I think that that's kind of what the case here was, as they looked at just the pairwise sequence divergence. So essentially just looking at how many nucleotides across all these, I think it was 2 or 3 genes they looked at, how much of it is different. And you just get a percentage, and the percentage was massive for some of them across Pelomedusa, more than a lot of Pallusios even. But it was a really interesting paper. I'm trying to pull it up here so we can just look at some of it. But it's that was one of the things that's just, it's cool when you see that kind of work. But the integrative aspect to it, I guess, is they also looked at, there were certain ones that are morphologically distinct. I think it's not. There are certain ones that genetically that's all you can look at, but I think that the at least the Olivaceae, the Sahelian terrapins, they look pretty distinct in terms of the coloration, and they also I think looked at some of the plastral, maybe the pectoral the interpectoral length or interhumeral length comparisons. And then there was another cool thing. They looked at the monogeneans, the flatworms, and that's something that in turtles, the monogenean worms, or flukes or worms, they're conserved across species. So typically there's a high host specificity, and there's been some work in the early 80s that used just flatworms to produce a phylogeny of turtles, and it backed up the one that was based on like a robust morphological analysis. So they also used those worms based on the hosts for kind of that delimitation, which is kind of, like you said, it's limited, I think, in terms of the morphological aspect. There needs to be done more there, but it was more holistic than a lot of just, we're just going to do the genetic analyses and that's it. I think it was a good start, but I don't know. It's just a cool thing. I don't know if you know anyone that's actually tested their captive Pelomedusa, or is that
No.
no, yeah.
Like, I mean, even people who have Pelomedusa don't really care about that genus, you know. So to the point of paying for a DNA test, no. But I mean, the paper was great. I mean, I'm not, you know, I don't want to criticize anything. I mean, they've done a very good job, and it must have been pretty difficult, and it must have been a really long process to do all of that work. So I think, like you said, it's just a start, and let's hope that there are going to be some follow up on that work. I mean, it's already been 8 years. But you know.
That is for our listeners. If you want to pull this paper up while you're listening to us, it's called A Revision of African Helmeted Terrapins with Descriptions of 6 New Species, published by Alice Petzold and others.
Oh, that was what was it, 2011? 2011?
2014.
I thought
2014, yes.
2014 was the Fritz paper.
I think Petzold was the first author. I'm trying to.
Oh, really? I have it here.
They had a lot of good graphics in there. I remember it, and like they show all of the different clades and everything. I'm trying to pull it up right now. I should have come prepared, but I can't get it on my computer for some reason.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're right. So,
Yeah.
where's the other one?
There was a Pallusio's paper in 2011 or 2010 that did the Pallusio's phylogenetics, but I don't know. All right, I got the. Okay, so the 2014 one was in Zootaxa. All right, I'll be able to get it in a second.
Yeah, I'm looking through my papers.
But yeah, it's actually pretty interesting. It would be interesting to people can take tissue samples and send them to, I think, the Fritz lab. I don't want to say, I don't know for sure, but I think that at least with I wrote something about this a few days ago, but the testudo, I know a few people that have done that from the U.S. They've taken tissue samples and sent them to Europe for analyses to look at haplotypes and what they have. Testudo still, I think most of them can be morphologically distinguished, but there's still some ambiguity there sometimes. I'm trying to find I got okay, here we go. This should okay here. So here is the Pelomedusa paper. I just love
2014.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull it up. I've got it in the window. Here we go. Can you guys see that? Not yet. One sec. Here we go. There we go. But yeah, I don't know. This paper was just it's a really fun read. and they seem to kind of have a good grasp on how kind of what they were doing. But yeah, you can see the whole. There was this northern clade here with all of the new. These are all the new species essentially that were not resurrected, but described. And then you've got two southern clades, the Cape Terrapins, I think the Galeata, and then the Subruffa, which is the nominate, I guess, subspecies or nominate species that was its own clade. And then this is the thing that was fun to look at with I guess the different haplotypes here. And this was historically all these different colors would have just been one. They would have just been blue, but this is kind of the diversity. The one thing too, if you look over here, right on the border, I think like north central Tanzania is where there are actually three that are sympatric, essentially in a very similar area. That's a pretty cool thing to look at.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So the Numini, I try to memorize all the common names at one point, but I don't know. I think the Numini are the East African helmeted turtles, the Tanzanian helmeted turtles, and then the, I guess, nominate helmeted turtles. They all occur in one area. So that, I guess, supports the idea that they're sympatric but different, that they're fully kind of diverged. But yeah, that's a cool graphic. And then these are the pairwise analyses, and you can see here, this is for, I think, this is the 12S, so this is mitochondrial, but a little bit less divergent. But then when you look at, I think site B is more for turtles, typically more. I mean, these are ridiculous. 18% divergence for Subruffa and clade 5, and I don't know which species that was. It's massive all across the board. And then you compare that to here's the Pallusios. They have the Pallusio. When you compare that to the Pallusios divergence, this was from a 2013 paper that did Pallusio's phylogenetics. I mean, the pairwise sequence divergence here for site B is not even. It's similar to Pelomedusoid, but these are full species that are separated by sometimes. I mean, across Africa. So it's just that kind of divergence is fascinating, I think. But it's just a really cool.
I'd like to see some new like ecological papers on their niche differentiation. I think if we see so much, genetic diversity, there must be some type of ecological reason behind it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, to actually have like a quantification of the like the physiographic boundaries would be cool, yeah. And to see, because that kind of cryptic diversity is really interesting, just evolutionarily. Like they're so different, but all those differences must be kind of like not really have a functional morphological effect. A lot of it must be just neutral differences. So it's kind of a cool thing to see, but it's tough for captive keepers because you're going to muddy the gene pool no matter what, if in potentially in bad ways if you're crossing species boundaries. Although for these, I would guess that they probably do interbreed even if they are separate species, and this is more the phylogenetic species concept, clade based. So I'm not sure that hybridization is necessarily ruled out for that. It's not necessarily that traditional species concept of you can't species. Well, I guess the hybridization is not what that is, so that doesn't make a difference. But it's interesting. I don't know who really. I don't even know anyone that really works with Pelomedusa in general, in terms of.
Yeah. In terms of.
Just in terms of like who would, there are a lot of people with testudo and tortoises that go into the haplotypes and everything, like they test them and everything, but I don't really even know anyone that works with Pelomedusa in general.
Yeah, in general, no, I do not know neither. I think luckily for us, I think most specimen that you'd find in the US would probably come from the exact same farm or whatever. So they most likely the specimen in the US are all the same species, because the import must come from probably the same place. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm just assuming. But so but yeah, but in terms of hybridization in nature, I'm not sure because I actually thought there were. Well, you said some were sympatric. Some species, you said.
Yeah, there's a little cluster in I think it was north central Tanzania that where you get the Kobe, the P. Kobe, the Numeni, and Sabrefa that all at least when in their map they're very close together. I think they mentioned that in the paper too, but I don't know if they were 100% like sympatric within the same water body or whatever. It could just be kind of syntopic, like similar but different ecologically, like Ken said, I guess, looking at that.
Yeah, because I thought there were only. I actually did not. I wasn't sure that a country would have multiple Pelomedusa species. I thought it was pretty separate country-wise, but I guess maybe not. I didn't. I mean, it's been a while since I've had to look at that paper. So I wasn't sure if you could find multiple Pelomedusa in in one same country. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I think that there were a few where there were more, but I think, yeah, like you said, a lot of countries just had kind of one variety, but there are a few areas where they overlap. Yeah, an ecological analysis. I think for that, at least, we need more, because that's all mitochondrial based, having a nuclear data set to back it up, but also a morphological quantification of characters, and then an ecological analyses. There's a lot of room for cool research there.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm thinking. There's a lot to be done. Like I said, I just hope somebody would conduct this research. And some are actually pretty different. Some are rather small. I have one at home. It's like, what is it, like 4 inches, something like that? Maybe a little more. It's 4.5 inches long. Some get to, what would it be, like 7 inches? There's a species that's rather big, I think, as big as like 7 inches or something. So there's a lot of diversity actually in those in Pelomedusa. Some would estivate the Sub-Saharan, most likely. I know for a fact that some Pelomedusa estivate in nature. Those from South Africa actually hibernate because it actually gets really cold in South Africa. I have a friend who's from South Africa. She keeps some Pelomedusa and she actually hibernate hers. So it's very interesting that one with the same species or same genus rather, not species, same genus, and I have one species that would hibernate and one would estivate. It's super cool. I think it's really cool.
That's awesome.
I guess that would be in that area of South Africa. They got to deal with both extremes in terms of temperatures. That's
the intense heat and the cold.
Yep.
How long typically, do you have any information on how long they typically estivate for or hibernate for?
Hibernate, I do not know, since most Pelusios actually do not hibernate. For estivation, I have a friend who estivated his Pelusios castaneus for 10 months. So yeah, that's. I would not personally do it. I think it's too risky. I have another friend who used to estimate his from December to March. That seems more reasonable to me. I would. Unfortunately, there's no studies on that particular topic. For obvious reason, it would be really difficult to monitor estivation in the wild. So I can't really say because there's no much information on that. But up to 10 months, that's possible. I doubt it's necessary in nature, though. I don't think you have a drought for 10 months straight. So, 4 months, I would say. 4 months was probably a wide guess. Like I said, I do not know because there's no research on that, so don't take my word for it. But there is one study on estivation and Pelomedusa. I think it's a French study. I could, yeah, I don't have it on hands, but I think it was a quick, couple pages long study on that on estivation with Pelomedusa. But like I said, there's no research done on that, sadly. Um, but yeah, it would be like hibernation, so 3-4 months, I suppose, in nature.
That makes sense. Turtles are pretty tough and hardy when it comes to that kind of thing. I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of captive people, that was one of the questions a lot of people had for viewers, but I think a lot of people that listen to this keep turtles, so they probably want to at least try to mimic natural environments as best as possible. So that's probably where that comes from. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's just kind of an unknown at this point. It's going to vary so much that 3 or 4 months rule is probably a good thing to follow in general, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, when you don't really know and there's no research done, just have a look at what's happening in nature. When do they estivate? They estivate when the lake dries out, and conditions are too harsh. So, they bury themselves, most likely around the lake, so the soil retains lots of moisture. It's not super dry. So, if you estivate in captivity, make sure your soil is slightly moist. Stuff like that. But like I said, if you reproduce nature, I doubt that a lake would remain dry for 8 months throughout the year. I don't have experience on that, so I can say, but I don't think that's happening in nature. So once again, try and copy nature. Try and read more about that environment and try to understand what's happening if you want to reproduce it. So that's why I would say, if the lake remains dry for 3-4 months, that seems possible to me. But beyond that, it seems to be a lot.
I guess you never know what the climatic extremes might be, but yeah, in terms of, I think they're pretty. It's good to do it in terms of the duration. That's probably more so up to the person keeping the animals.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, there's no ground truth. We don't really know. There's no studies on that. I never estimated mine, to be honest. I have a friend who does it every year. So put them in the. He lowers the water level slowly, over time, and some would naturally actually just go bury themselves. They would climb on the nesting area and just dig a hole and bury themselves in the sand. So if they actually show that natural behavior, I think it's pretty cool. Gives you a good idea of that might be happening in nature. Not all Pelusios have the need to estivate, and even within a species, I guess would depend on the microclimate where they are, and so on. But actually, my my it's not estivation, but my Pelusius nanus, the dwarf mud turtle. When I first got mine, I put them in like, I don't know, a foot of water in the tank. Even though they're rather small, like 3 inches, not even 2.5 inch long. I put them in like a foot of water, and they spent, I think, the first month just buried in the nesting box. They refused to go in the water, and now I found it kind of strange. And I'm like, man, this is really weird. So I lowered the water level, and I lowered it back to 4 or 5 inches. Slowly woke them up, pour some water on the sand. They wake up, and I put them in the water, and they never went back up into the sandbox, into the nesting box. So I'm not sure what it is. I don't know if they just don't like deep water or something. It's really strange, but it was pretty cool. I just got them. I'm fairly new with keeping them, and I think I do what I think is best. Give them the option to have swimming uh, depth water, and they just climb on the nesting area and just bury themselves for a month.
That's interesting to me. Because that reminds me, Maurice has a ton of them. Like he has a big group of them. And when we were there, a bunch of them were buried in the sand, like with their heads poking out. Like I was kind of surprised at that. And it was very shallow water too, but they seemed to really like it like that. I don't.
Like what? Like shallow water? You mean?
Yeah, they were active all over it. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Most of the people I know actually keep them in very shallow water, couple inches. 4 inches. But yeah, it's an interesting topic.
Like looking at how that's mirrored in wild populations. Got a visitor.
Yeah.
Looking at how that's mirrored in wild populations is an interesting, like, yeah, in thinking about that, I guess it's a different level. Like from a captive situation, why is it that they prefer that shallower water? Is that something that's reflected in situ? Is something really interesting in looking for those comparisons. There's some interesting, nothing about habitat requirements. I think that 2016 paper mentioned that they're more of a savanna species in nature rather than like a mesic or forest species. Like I think Gabonensis, the forest turtles, are more of a forest species, where the Nanus, the dwarf mud turtles, I think are more kind of open savanna ponds, that type of thing. That's at least what I've heard. I don't. You could probably speak to that better than I can.
Which paper was that?
I think it was the 2016. I forget who wrote it, but it was a while. I think that they also analyzed Nanus.
Hold on, my cat is Let me check my. Hold on.
I
have my document
with me too.
You said 2016?
I think it was 2016. It was the one that looked at, I think it was 6 Pallusios. And they mentioned that they're more of a savanna species.
2015.
15, okay.
I think, yeah. I actually don't recall. Yeah, I actually don't recall that article.
Let's see if I might be able to find that.
But I think it's this one. Let me pull it up for you. Do you want? I think the author is Kindler. Is it from Kindler?
Yeah, that's the one with the K. Yep.
Yeah, 2015.
I'll pull that up on my. Okay, so 2015 Kindler.
Yeah, speaking of nanas, actually, so those two upembe that first came into the US back in 2009, the African person, exporter, whatever. So, like I said, initially they were supposed to get Bucranicus, and so he couldn't provide Bucranicus, so he threw in upembe instead, and he actually threw a nanus with them, little nanus, in the package, and so nanus back then in 2009, you can think, nanus was pretty difficult to really, really difficult to find, and so that would have been one of the not first nanus import, but one of the rare import that you get, but it was dead on arrival, unfortunately for my friend, so didn't make it. But yeah, nanus were not found.
Oh, Ken had to leave.
Oh, okay. So Ken popped off. All right.
I got about 30 minutes, so I think I'm good.
All right, we should be good.
Let me double check.
When did the first Nanus come in? into the U.S.? I'm curious.
Yeah, that I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Nanas, they're yeah, they used to be really difficult to get a hold of. Like I said, 2009. I don't think you could. Probably a handful of people had them. I imagine. I'm not sure. But today it seems to be one of those species that's drawn a lot of attention, and I they're not that difficult to get. I think today. I see a lot of people who have them and actually breed them. First import, I don't have that information for Nanus.
Here's the paper. I love how they do the phylogenies and then have kind of the imposed species on them. But this is that Kindler et al. 2015 paper.
Yeah.
And here, let me. Yeah, this is kind of interesting. That I thought that this was a cool graphic. But Nanus was, I guess, sister to Gavinensis, but there's still. I think that they're not. I think they're more closely related to like their position in terms of how they're related to the other Pallusios is pretty disputed. I think like they've been hypothesized as closer to a Dancini, but that was based on morphology, and then genetically they're more allied to the the Cupulata, and the Cupulata, and I forget the other. There's like clade with Cupulata and another species, but that was kind of. But this is they mentioned in here. Yeah, let me see. I think so. They mentioned in here somewhere. I think that where they talk about if they're savanna species in terms of their habitat in the wild. It's kind of interesting, I guess, to look at for again people that might be keeping them in captivity, just to know ecologically where they are. I don't know yet. Maybe in the results we can find out what they.
This is a bit of a like random point to bring up here, but I feel like you said this at one point, Michael. The Gabonensis have like that black stripe on the top that the Aubreyi also have, like the Cycloderma aubreyi, and they're in the same area.
Yep.
And was it Pritchard that originally like made that point, or like a long time ago? Like,
yeah, that was in the Encyclopedia of Turtles. That there's like a convergence of that black dorsal stripe.
yeah,
It's pretty. It's a strange thing, right?
That's really weird, but that's interesting. Like,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Of the species that you've kept, like which of them have you had success breeding, Kevin?
None of them so far. None of them bred. My Nanus. Well, how would I say it? Copulate, I would say. I see the male mounting the female like all the time. The female has not laid eggs yet. But he's been mounting them for like a year, so I'm not sure if he is. Maybe he's too small, or if the problem is the female. I'm not sure yet. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't have my Gabonensis. They're still not interested. They're not breeding. As for the other ones, I'm either lacking a female or lacking a male. So I'm still building the groups. My breeding groups. So yeah, I haven't bred them yet.
Gotcha.
Sadly.
And now, are you keeping all of your turtles like indoors, or do you keep anything outside? Or
they're outdoor during the summer, starting in April or May. They go outdoor in those those Rubbermaid tubs.
yeah,
Stock tank rather. They're outdoor, and in the winter I bring them in because it gets way too cold here, Arkansas. That's the thing with African species. I can't have them outside all year long, so it's a bit annoying. But you have to do what you have to do. So,
Yeah, so
I have to
in
do that
this,
with a lot of my turtles. Bring almost all my turtles. I have to bring them in the winter because most of them are not native to this kind of area, so they can't tolerate the cold. Only like my eastern box turtles can stay outside during the winter. Like my sulcatas and like rhinoclemes have to come in.
oh yeah,
so in this paper they do say Rhodesianus, and they compare Rhodesianus and Nanus as similar habitat savanna species. And the point that they're making is Rhodesianus, there's a lot of genetic diversity, whereas Nanus, there's not as much based on the geography. But yeah, so I guess that they're, at least where they were looking at them, they consider them a savanna species, which I guess it's sort of interesting if you're keeping them in captivity to know, I guess, where they are in the wild.
yeah. Well, yeah. Whichever you keep, you have to do a minimum of research. Well, sometimes it's difficult, especially on Pelusios. You don't have much information out there, or it's difficult to find information.
I think we've pretty much covered all the papers on the topic.
Oh, I have the whole. I can show you actually. I have it here. I have that much paper on Pelusios. It's pretty,
There we go. There we go.
yeah. So there's quite a few literature on the topic, but
Okay, there's a good deal. Yeah.
I'm still missing a couple papers.
But still, for a species group that is the second most diverse genus of turtles, I mean, you'd have, for red-eared sliders, you could probably stack papers to the moon. So
yeah, definitely. The cool thing with Pelusios, lucky for me actually, that's one of the reasons why I continued studying Pelusios, is because lots of work has been done by French herpetologists. So I can find both resources, both English and French. So that's another good point for me. So I have access to papers that non-French speaker do not have access to.
that's interesting. Yeah, that's a good thing to have. With papers and stuff, the CCB, the Colonian Conservation Biology, I don't have like a university login, so I've got to pester all my college friends. I'm sure that we can all, well, Kevin obviously doesn't need to worry about that, but Jason and Jack can relate. I mean, Pelusios is just such a fascinating group of turtles, and for how little has been done, I think there's so much room for, as we've talked about, like there's definitely a lot of cryptic diversity, and I think a lot of room for species descriptions in the future, with specifically Sinuatus, Rhodesianus. Sinuatus, we already kind of see it, I guess, with the new subspecies. I think there'll be a lot, though, like when we go into the DRC, ROC, and the Central African Republic areas, there's so much there. And then, yeah, like ecology-wise, I think that's where a lot of people's questions come. But realistically, we don't have a lot of the answers, I think, in terms of where the Edward and Don Mull's River Turtle book has some Pelusios anecdotes. They mention Nanus in there, and I think Rhodesianus, but it's kind of limited, though, in what but that's more just about like where they are native to, not really habitat requirements. But it's interesting. Like ecologically, is there really anything you know of that's looked at species specific habitat usage, like study wise, or?
What do you mean?
I don't know. Like looking across different Pelusios, like where, like they are ecologically, what kind of habitats they occur in.
No. No, to be honest, I don't think there's much done on that part as well. I think Thomas with Pelusios adensini probably tackle that point. I think because I mean, that's one of his main interests back in the Senegal. Other than that, no, not really. There's not much done on ecology or the ecological aspect.
Pelomedusa, there has been a bit more done, I think, but they're just strange. Two of the things is that they eat birds. I believe that's been.
Yeah, I think that's been established.
And then they take ticks. There's photos of this, of them taking ticks out of large mammals. Well, in a lot of different areas.
Dude, that species is just.
That's amazing.
I got a. So I got one at home. So I rescued it from a friend. He didn't want it anymore, so he sent it to me. And then I rescued another Pallusio castaneus male from a friend. And I also had my little Erimnoculus madagascarensis, the Madagascar big head turtle. So I had my little one, and I temporarily, and they're pretty much the same size, all three that I'm talking about. And overnight, I put them in the same tub temporarily, to clean up the other tub. I woke up in the morning, and that fucker Pelomedusa killed both of them. He killed my Rhymnochelis and Pelusios. Like man, I was
Wow, you were probably losing your mind.
They're terrible turtles. They kill everything. They kill everything. That paper I mentioned about estivation. So I think it was a study done in I think Corsica in France, and so they monitor those Pelomedusa outdoor. And there's another turtle that happened to cross the enclosure. Those Pelomedusa caught it and just ate it. They're just terrible animals, like very terrible. They eat anything, like. Yeah. There's that viral. Have you seen that video of the Pelomedusa attacking a lion drinking water?
I haven't seen that, but that sounds awesome.
Oh, you haven't seen it? Yeah. It's so you have a lion back in Africa, of course. It's drinking water from a lake, and you have that little Pelomedusa to come across it and bite its nose. So the lion runs away. Tries to drink water again, and the Pelomedusa follows him and just keep attacking it. Like
they have so much confidence. They don't care how much bigger anything is than them.
Oh yeah.
They have 100% aggression and instinct.
Yeah. I've heard many occurrences of Pelomedusa especially in France because they're pretty common. But somebody just wakes up and he just sees the Pelomedusa and a piece of shell and a piece of plastron remaining in the water, which is the dead turtle that the Pelomedusa ate overnight. It's just
whatever else it killed.
Yeah.
One of the things that's pretty interesting is the Turkana Mud Turtles. I've heard that there's kind of a convergence in terms of attitude with the Pelomedusa, where they are, and even like morphology. Like Turkana Mud Turtles don't have a hinge, or it's essentially the plastron doesn't move, and they've got a big plastron that when you flip them over, they kind of look similar, like the femoral wasping or the anal scutes. The configuration looks similar to what you'd expect in Pelomedusa. I don't know. That character convergence is pretty interesting. But their attitude, that's the point I was trying to make, I guess. They're supposedly really pugnacious, whereas most Pallusios aren't. I don't know if that's something you've noticed.
I don't have the Turkana maternal, so I can't speak for them. But the other point is true. Yeah, most Pallusios are super calm. Especially those. You would think those big species like Niger, I think what is it, black mud turtle or something. I'm not sure of the name. But Pallusios Niger, and it's pretty massive. Pretty big head, triangular head, very pointy nose. Pointy beak, but it's super calm. Like never really seen any aggression from Pelusios.
Interesting.
Except for breeding, they could be pretty violent when they breed.
Really good.
Some of-
Get rowdy.
That's
the picture that the Turtle Conservancy, I think it was, a while ago, they posted a picture of a Pelomedusa eating a tick out of I think it was a hippo.
Hippo?
It was a hippo rear orifice. It's kind of interesting.
There was like a cluster of ticks on there too. This thing was just picking them off. Like,
yeah, no, they're pretty interesting animals.
So I'm curious what your favorite Pallusio is, because you got a variety too. What's the one that you enjoy most or find most interesting?
Honestly, I think Pelusios Niger is probably my favorite. Like I said, it's that adults are pretty big. I mean, it's not super big, but it gets to like 12, 1 foot long maybe or something. Very, very pretty, and it's just very slow. It's super elegant. I think I really enjoy Pelusios Niger. It's probably, although now my Upembe is starting to grow on me. Upembe are very, very cute, actually. Super interesting. Nanas have a little personality. I found them very, very personable. Like, they really have a defined personality.
yeah, I saw that with most captive Manus I've seen were like really very personable and like active turtles. Like they weren't like gonna just try and hide when they saw you. Like they were very ambitious and running around and would like expect that you were going to feed them or something. Like they were they had no qualms with it.
Yeah. So Nanas are interesting as well. But yeah. Niger would be my favorite. Pelusios Niger.
Oh, and Michael, since we're probably nearing like the end, I got about like 10-15 minutes. We still gonna do that game we normally do at some point?
Let's do it. If you guys are good. In terms of questions, I think it's been fun to talk about everything.
This has been really fun.
Were there any of the viewer submitted questions that we wanted to get to, or did we want to do that like after the trivia game while we have Jack around?
I think we should. Let's go through. So we've got some viewer questions. That's a good idea, Jason. Jason, do you want to read them?
If I can find them here in a second.
All right. I've got some on I can ask. So we've got some viewer submitted questions, and we can just run these by you, Kevin, and I guess anyone can contribute. But they're all, well, some of them are kind of random, but some of them are African turtles related. So we can run through that real quick, and then we play a little game at the end here that we'll introduce. So I've got a few while Jason pulls those up. I've got a few from my account, not too many. So we should. So the first question, this came from, this is not something that we're going to answer because I'm not really sure how we answer this, but I think it deserves a mention. This came from Ungulate World. He says, most sus African tortoise. I think that this is a reference to the video game Among Us, but I'm happy to say I don't play that, but I'm not sure how we answer that. So we'll go to the next one.
Cameron always asks stuff like that.
Realistically, if I was going to answer that, I might say Pelomedusa because based on the pictures and stuff that I've seen, they seem to get into situations that are a little bit questionable or they're eating. So I don't know. Maybe there is. Okay, so this one comes from BJ Foles. He wanted to know how Pelomedusa survives such long periods, or Pelomedusidae survive such long periods of aestivation.
Um, uh, I don't think there is a known. Like I said, it's not studied at all, so it's not like we understand. We know everything about it. What I know for sure is that they most likely breed themselves where it's moist, so because the biggest issue is dehydration, of course. No, nothing else is very life threatening. But so I guess the most interesting is dehydration. So as long as it's moist, I think that's the key to have them survive estivation safely. I think actually they're known to move around. That study I mentioned, they sometimes wake up, move around, and bury themselves elsewhere. Maybe it's moist related. I'm not sure. Uh,
Interesting.
if that doesn't really answer the question, but I can't. Like I said, I only know what's published, so I can't really. There's no publication on that, so
I think they've got pretty extensive fat reserves too, so they can go a good deal of time based on, I guess, fat metabolism.
well, I
But
mean,
that-
they're not active. It's not like they need to burn calories or whatnot. They're barely
yeah,
breathing, and they just the metabolism is super slowed down. So it's not like they need a lot of calories, anyways. And, they don't need energy. But like I said, I think the critical point would be dehydration.
mhm.
Probably the most dangerous point.
Okay. Garcia Reptiles. He wants to know if any African species are currently endangered. I think we sort of covered this, so we don't need to go deep into it. But the Nubian flapshell comes to mind.
Nubian
Um,
flapshell.
I guess
Some of
other,
the, some of the homopus and stuff. If we're talking the whole continent, or
Well, you have Kinexius as well.
yeah,
Yeah, I think two of the 4 or 5 Kinexius are endangered. I think.
okay, yeah, some of the
another like random point, but apparently like almost nothing is done on the status, and nothing has really been researched. Very little has been researched on like sulcatas in the wild, like African spirit tortoises in the wild. Like I have 3 of them in my basement, and they're like one of the most common turtles in the pet trade, and they're one of the largest and most interesting tortoises in the world. But so little has actually been done.
Actually, yeah. To come back to your ecological question, there's been a lot of work on sulcata and the
Oh,
ecological impact it has. Actually, it's just wanted to mention that.
oh yeah,
They're actually
wasn't,
super
wasn't it
important.
more recent too?
Uh,
Like it was fairly recent work that was done.
Yeah, not like a few years back, but yeah, it's not super old. Yeah. But yeah, they're kind of like the golfer tortoises of
Yeah,
Africa.
very similar.
Ecologically speaking, they play the same role.
Yeah, I read a few things from like I think it was in CCB or something a while ago about that, and yeah, just even for the impact and like the place they hold in the pet trade, it's still kind of like it's a lot more. It's like a bit more explosive than what's actually been done with them in the wild, but it's still I don't know. Hoping to see that take off over time.
And yeah, no Pelusios are endangered. Well, not yet. Just for the question.
some of them are pretty restricted, like the Turkanas and the Williams mud turtles. But in terms of like conservation status,
Conservation status, they're not. Like I said, it's just like one of those species that nobody really cares about until it's too late, or which for understandable reasons. But yeah, Turkana Pelusius broadleyi, Turkana Mud Turtle is probably the one that I would that should be next on the list. Every species that's restrained to that small of a distribution range might is potentially in danger to become endangered. However, I believe Kenya recently banned any export of wildlife or something. So that would cover turtles, and so I mean Kenya is doing some fantastic work with their wildlife. So the Pelusius broadleyi might not reach that critically endangered or endangered status, even though they're only restricted to that one lake or two lakes. It's one big lake, whatever. The Turkana Mud Turtle. So even though their distribution is super small, I don't think it will become endangered.
All right.
We could do a couple questions off the CheloniaCast Instagram and then get right into the trivia.
Yeah, I've just got one more in here.
Okay.
Someone asked about the diet of Marmes leprosa. I would just say we covered that at the end of episode 1 with Simone from France. So I'd refer you there. And yeah, Jason, if you want to.
So we had a couple people ask like pretty much the same question. Shamik Saith and Garcia Reptiles 42 wanted to know how many species of turtles or Colonians exist within Africa.
Oh, I don't have the numbers, but it's pretty easy to count. You have 18 Pelusios, 14 Pelomedusa, Trionyx, 2 Cerclanobis, Homopus, a couple Kinexis. Was it like 5 Kinexis? It's like 30 something. Do you include Madagascar or probably Africa?
Probably, yeah, I'd assume so.
Yeah. So you have Madagascar. Oh, you have the Astrachelis, to the Erimnochelis. So Africa, like 40 something species, maybe.
Mid 40s, low 50s, man. Yeah.
And then Paul Cuneo asked, if we could talk about the seasonal movements of African helmeted turtles.
There's a paper on that actually that showed that they African helmeted, so that's Pelomedusa. They actually move a lot. They typically don't stay in that particular little water body. They actually move a lot, which they tied to the reason why they don't have webbed feet. I don't know if you know, they don't have any Pelomedusa. Don't have any web. How do you call it? Paws or
like
whatever.
Webbing or
Yeah. It's just it's like a straight. It's just big claws, which they tied it to the reason that they move a lot, and so they don't necessarily need that webbing of the feet, but rather need like pretty strong claws to walk and injure the. But there's a paper on that. That's all I can speak of. Like they actually move around a lot. They're more like a type of turtle to move from water body to water body constantly. That's what the paper proposed.
Interesting.
Right on. I think that covers like all the questions that we got. And if we didn't, I think there was like a couple that we didn't necessarily answer specifically, but we did talk about the subjects earlier on. So with that said, we could probably get into the trivia here. I'm not sure if we want to do 1v1 or teams or what the format for today was going to be.
I guess I can explain to Kevin. So we're gonna put you on the spot. No, I'm kidding. We do. No, we're not. We do a little game at the end. You can participate if you want or not, but it's a trivia volley, I guess. We've been doing it the past few episodes where we have the guests ask us 5 turtle questions, and then we ask the guest 5 questions, and it's just a little friendly turtle trivia match. No one's actually really keeping score or anything, but the point is it's kind of a fun thing to do, and you can pull the most random piece of, I guess, knowledge. To quote Carl Franklin, useless knowledge that can't be used anywhere else out and stump someone and teach everyone else something. But so we've done it where we do a wheel generator, and we do person per person, or we can do, I guess, African turtle expert versus the host. We could, if you want to participate, then.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
All right. So, okay, cool. So we can do, I guess we'll do Kevin versus all of us. And so that'll be fun. And then, so we come up with like 5 questions each, give us like 2 minutes or something like that. And all right, cool. I'll cue some music. All right, we've got a little group chat we go on here to talk, so I'm trying to think.
5 turtle questions.
Are you boys figuring some stuff out here?
Trying to.
All right. I had a question, but it was way too controversial, so I'm not going to do it.
I'm fine with it. Don't worry.
No, like the answer, I think it would agree. Like it's
Okay.
Jesus.
Jason with these. These are the silent killer questions over here.
Jason, I think you've done that same kind of question for like 3 of them now.
Well, I mean, I know a bit of the
Yeah,
taxonomy, but I can't do like anything super like in depth about other aspects of things. So I just gotta stick to what I know, I suppose.
The issue is the fact that like the more complex you get, the more controversial you get.
Yeah, that's true. Hold on a second. No. Damn, yeah, you're right. I keep thinking of them, but then they're all like, they could be argued. They're not like solid. Oh, I got one.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. That's a great one.
Okay, so we've got 4 between us. Somebody come up with one more.
Hold up. Let's try and do.
Those are both applicable questions too to Africa, so that should be good.
Well, my questions are only on Pallusio.
All right, that's good. Yak or Jason, one more.
Oh no, it's kind of general. I just sent one.
All right, we're at 2 minutes. Kevin, if you need a few more minutes, we're good.
I have 4 questions. I'm trying to find a 5th one. It's more like a fun fact,
Jack, do you know the answer to that question?
You know what? That's a good point. I don't.
That's more of a question for Kevin, I think.
Yeah, actually,
I
that's
was
kind
gonna
of what
say, I feel like Kevin already answered, like, or
Yeah,
he's touched on it earlier, so he might actually.
that's a
know
good
it.
point. I should probably stick to something. I should probably ask something I would know the answer to.
All right, we've got 4. If someone, Jason or Jack, come up with something quick, it doesn't need to be too complex, but something kind of weird, I guess.
Okay. You got one, Jason? Or
Yeah, I think so.
all right, we'll go with that.
Just gotta type into the chat real quick. Is that okay? Sufficient.
Let's see.
Yeah, I like that.
I haven't gotten it yet, but
All right, I think we should.
all right, we are good. Okay, let's get going. We got 5. Kevin, I think has 5. So
I have 4.5 something. Yeah, that's fine.
okay. So you can choose. You want us to go first, or you go first? Yes.
I can go first. Mine are pretty
All right.
fast questions. So
When he says so, you know it's about to get real.
no. Pelusius adensani is affine with another Pelusius species. So there. I don't know if you know affine, but anyways, which Pelusius species would it be?
Broadleia.
That's actually correct. Did you know?
I did know, yes. They look similar, but yeah.
Yeah. Those are affine species. Yeah. Well, very good. Well, I'm actually impressed.
I remember
to
that.
get with this.
Second question in the book, Turtle of the World, the green book. I don't know if I forgot the author.
Barber, is it?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a Pelusius picture, which they say is a Pelusius gabonensis. The picture is actually wrong. Which species is it?
All right, I think I have.
I-
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
No clue on this one.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm with Jason. I don't even have that.
Yeah, sorry, it's very specific. I'm sorry.
Okay,
that's the point we're supposed to do.
I've got like 2 ideas in my head of this. One of them makes more sense to me because of range, but one of them morphology-wise makes more sense.
Well, surely one of them is the answer. So
Okay, I'm just gonna. What would they mistake? Is it Morani?
Nope.
Or Cupulata? That Cupulata is my second.
yeah, yes. So they have a Pelusius, a photo of a Pelusius cupulata, which they labeled as Pelusius gabonensis. Back in that time, cupulata was actually not described. But what's funny to me is that if you take that specimen that is on the picture, you take the specimen, you read the description of Pelusius gabonensis, it doesn't match, and they never realized. But anyways, so yeah, it's a cupulata, and it's labeled as gabonensis. Yes. So that's 2. What was the first Pelusius species described? In what year?
In what year?
Well, I don't have to say the year, but yeah.
Okay.
The answer is actually surprising. Which was the first to be described?
That's oh gosh.
I'm thinking of this. I don't know. Oh,
I'm trying to read. It's okay. So there's a bunch that were described by Roger Bohr in the 1980s, but this is way before.
Yeah.
This has got to be like early to mid. 1800s.
A lot earlier, 100 years earlier.
Early.
1789.
Okay. Where would people be collecting? That's where my head's trying to go here. It's gonna be somewhere coastal, I think. I don't think that they would have been. Huh. Yeah, this is so specific. I think just for the sake, does anyone have a guess they want to throw out? I've got a guess.
Go for it.
Yeah, go for it, man. I don't want to like.
You don't want to be the one that I don't think this is right,
I'll
but just
take the fall for it.
let me. Oh wait. Oh gosh.
If you get it right, I just leave. I just quit.
I've got two in my head now, but
Okay.
was it sinuatus?
No. And close to it.
Subniger was the second one that I was thinking.
It is sub. It is sub.
Oh my gosh! I've
That's
got
not
both of them on the second. Dang.
1789. Subniger.
Okay.
It's pretty good. So that's a question. So, oh, this is what is this question? Which scutes do all Pelusios lack?
Oh, okay. Well, they've got plastron wise, they have extra scutes.
Mhm.
The intergular, I guess, that's all.
Yeah, there's two things with all Pelusios. They all lack that scutes, and they all have an intergular scutes as well. So, which scutes do they lack?
I know this one, but I don't know if anyone wants to.
Yeah, I think I told you a while back, actually.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
I guess nuchal.
I was just about to say that's probably what it is.
Yeah, but yes, scutes wise, it's cervical. Nuchal is the bone, but yeah, it's a cervical scute.
Okay, yeah. All right.
You guys are good, actually. You guys are.
Well, I feel bad because all the second tries, but sure.
Last question. It's kind of difficult.
Uh-oh.
Jesus.
So, I'm trying to word it.
That's not a good sign.
No, it's just. I mean, it's more like a fun fact to know. So I'm trying to make it as a question for viewers.
Okay.
Well, would you know who described Broadlei? Pelusios Broadlei? Do you know?
Yes. I think.
Oh, so who?
Okay, so well, this is kind of a complex question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's named after Donald Broadley,
Yes.
who was the one that discovered the two that were at the Cal Academy of Science. But he didn't discover them in the wild. He just found the two at the Cal Academy and sent them to Roger Bohr, who described it. But they were first described in a symposia in 1983 at in Paris by Roger Wood, the paleontologist, but he didn't describe them. They were just pictures of them in the presentation.
Yeah, you're actually very good, man. Like, I'm really surprised.
I distinctly remember that from that. I think it was Prokop, the one who wrote the paper on him. I remember that story because I like those historical things.
Yeah, that's the point I was trying to make. What happened is Donald Broadley, not sure how to say his name, Broadley. So he noted that the difference between Adensonii and Pelusios Broadlei. He first noted that difference, but so and in that time he was discussing with Roger Bohr a lot, and so he pointed Bohr to that direction. He pointed that difference.
Oh, he's frozen. Uh-oh. His connection dropped.
I say, boys, it's 12:15. I might have to leave a bit soon. So.
All right, no problem.
We got to ask him his question. Here, let me text him and we'll cut this out. Uh-oh.
I'm sorry.
Uh-oh.
But the
I probably have to get going as well too. So do you want to maybe finish it off for us, Michael? Or
all right, sure. I can finish off. I'll represent you guys in the trivia.
Yeah, you'll represent us, and make sure you say who specifically wrote the questions.
I will.
Give credit where credit's due.
I'll have to see. Yeah, I'll have to see if he knows it, but he probably does. But it depends on how much he's into tortoises.
All right, sounds good. See you guys. He's coming back on now.
Oh yeah, if he's got social media or something, just link it for us.
I will.
So
Yeah, I'll send you guys this. He's trying to get back on, but we'll see. I'll have to cut this part out.
All right, see you, boys.
All right, see you. All right, so if this doesn't get cut out here, Kevin's coming back in. It's all me right now, so he's going to be surprised it's just me, but I'm going to represent them for questions. That's the deal with these online platforms, is sometimes you got to deal with. You got to deal with this sometimes, so technical difficulties, you got to deal with that. But how was everyone's day? No, this has been a fun discussion. Oh, here he is. Okay. All right, Kevin. So in the process, I think that the Wi-Fi just disconnected, but the two of them had to go. So I'll finish up for him here, and I'll ask you our questions and represent them.
All right.
But yeah, if you want to finish, you were talking about the description of.
Yeah, just briefly. So yeah, it's kind of like you mentioned. So Bradley noticed the difference and told Bohr about it. So Bohr was interested, and like you said, Roger Wood so technically Roger Wood had the holotype specimen, the specimen that you usually describe, the first specimen that's used to describe a species, and but because Bohr described a species with another specimen, so technically he described a species with a paratype specimen, which is unlike Bohr. So the paratype became the holotype because he used it to describe a species. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, you had it right anyways.
Cool. All right, I can just go through ours real quick.
Yeah.
So the first one was this is from Jason. He does all these specific. The genus and species name for the Japanese pond turtle.
The Japanese pond turtle?
Yeah.
Japanese. Oh, shoot. Oh my god. Oh, Moramis japonica?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, I was gonna say these are unfair for a Pallusio guy.
Yeah, it's Moramis japonica.
Yeah. There you go. You got that. All right. Mine was, what did Dogon chiefs use sulcatas for? There's a reference to this in, I think it's the Devois Turtles of the World book. This is a pretty specific one. Like
So who is it? You said.
Dogon chiefs. I think I forget the country, but somewhere in West Africa, one of the, I think it's Burkina Faso or Mali. I think Mali. They use Dogon chiefs, the tribes there. They use sulcatas for a specific purpose. What is that purpose? There's a reference. Yeah.
Are they? Is it dead or alive?
I would
Sulcata.
assume alive, but
Alive.
there's not a reference. If they actually could be dead, I would say both potentially. They don't mention the status of the tortoise in the book where this is referenced.
Oh, interesting. What would you use sulcata for?
It's not
Why don't you-
immediately obvious, but you might be able to reason this one out.
No, I'm not sure. I don't know.
They sit on them for like tribal ceremonies and use them as like benches, I guess.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting.
Interesting, yeah, I didn't know.
Okay, so the second question mine was, what are the two masquerade tortoises on Mauritius? This is another one that's like
Repeat the question. The two what?
the two masquerade tortoises on Mauritius. What are the two species?
Oh, Mauritius. Oh, I actually have read that. I cannot remember.
All right, it's Cylindraspis inepta and Cylindraspis tricerata. Those are the two there, but again, yeah, that's just a weird.
Wow. Yeah, no, I don't even think I knew actually. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one that's just weird. Okay, so Jack's question was, which region has the largest leopard tortoises?
The largest leopard tortoise?
Yeah, like this is a controversial one, but I would say like there's a specific area. Well, there are actually two, but there's one particular area that is referenced a lot as having leopard tortoises that get huge.
Oh, yeah. Did you want the country or the
Yeah, country is good.
country? Oh.
It's one of the. I think it's one of the countries that Broadlei is in. Barely in.
Oh, brother is in Kenya, so that would be Kenya.
Oh, okay. Then maybe that was misleading. It's not Kenya, but you can still get. I'll give you another guess because I did. I might have been wrong on that hint.
No, I'm not. I do not know that actually.
So Ethiopia.
I was gonna say Ethiopia.
Yeah, yeah, it's one of those things where there's schools in the capital there that have like 28, potentially 30 plus inch leopard tortoises. So they're like
3
massive.
inch.
Yeah, I think it's like 27 to 30 plus inches is what I've seen, which is huge for Achilles.
Yeah.
I was actually at a conference at University of Georgia last week, and one of the people that was there with me is from there, and she was telling me how when she was a kid at the schools, she used to ride on these massive tortoises. And the connection I had, I was like, well, those could have been huge leopard tortoises. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so the last question is these are another one from Jason. Jason likes to do the taxonomy, the Latin name.
Okay.
So, okay. Genus name for the red-headed Amazon river turtle.
The red-headed Amazon river turtle.
Yeah, the red-headed podoc.
Oh, product name is Erythrocephala.
Yeah, there you go. All right, good.
How do you guys how do you call it? What's the common name?
He called it the. Let me see exactly what he calls it. I mean, I would just call it red-headed Amazon river turtle, but he says red-headed podoc turtle, which
Okay.
I've heard that as well. So
Yeah, which
yeah,
made it a lot easier.
yeah. All right. Well, that's just our little fun game we play at the end, mostly just to get the random stuff out that doesn't fit anywhere.
Yeah, like I said, that's where you learn, fun facts and share a little fun fact that you've, learned through just random talks. That's really fun.
It gets competitive sometimes, like past episodes.
Really?
Yeah, it's gotten a little not too bad, but it gets a little tense.
For what topic was it?
We've had a few of them where it's contested and people don't want to. I mean, I'm in the same boat. People don't want to be wrong, that kind of thing. So it's never bad. It's always friendly competition, but
Yeah, of course.
it can get heated sometimes. This was a good one. All right. I mean, this has been a great discussion. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we love to have these sort of taxon specific talks, but just overall, I mean, this has really been fascinating. Thanks for spending 2+ hours with us. And yeah, this has just been awesome. We'll definitely in the future, maybe next season or something, reach out to you again, because we didn't even scratch the surface with the Erimnacheles or Peltocephalus or anything. So we'll have to do something else.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
even Pelusius-wide, I mean, there's a lot more to cover. The Williamsy topic.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, it's been awesome. Thanks for coming on, Kevin.
Well, thanks for having me. It was really great. And yeah, hopefully, hope I actually meet you in August, I think.
Yeah, I hope that we all. Yeah. So you're going to the TSA conference, or?
Yeah, most likely I will go. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Hopefully we'll. I should be there as well, and hopefully, Jason, Jack, and Ken might be there as well. So that would be really cool. But,
yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thanks for
All
coming
right, well,
on.
Michael, thanks for having me, and yeah, I'll talk to you soon. And whenever there's a new Pelusius article that comes out, we can have a look together.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
All right, sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
See you.
I'll see you.